Huge news in the search to discover the origins of the COVID pandemic. A classified intelligence report handed to the White House says the US Energy Department has concluded COVID-19 likely arose from a lab leak. This is based on new intelligence. Now, we already knew that 3 workers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were hospitalised with COVID-like symptoms around October or November 2019. This was thought to possibly be the first cluster of the pandemic, and we broke this news exclusively here on Sky News. My sources tell me the new part is that those scientists were working directly with bat coronaviruses. The United States President's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said the national labs had been brought into the origins investigation.
Some elements of the intelligence community have reached conclusions on one side, some on the other. A number of them have said they just don't have enough information to be sure. Here's what I can tell you. President Biden has directed repeatedly every element of our intelligence community to put effort and resources behind getting to the bottom of this. He wants to put every tool at use to be able to figure out what happened here.
That was Jake Sullivan on CNN on Sunday. Now, the Energy Department in the United States oversees a network of US laboratories, including America's biodefense labs. One of these is the highly secretive Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. This lab prepared a bombshell classified report in May 2020, 3 years ago. It made the case back then that COVID-19 may have originated in a Wuhan lab as a result of, and this is what the report said, synthetic and serial passage gain-of-function biological research. This report, even though it was from America's experts in the field, was dismissed by the intelligence community at the time because it wasn't a consensus document. It was a highly controversial report and it was buried. The United States Acting Assistant Secretary of State for Defence Policy and Emerging Threats, Thomas DiNanno, he was furious when he found out that this report had been suppressed. He told me, "We're not in the consensus business. I'm not interested in the round-table collective opinion." He had quite an argument with other intelligence officials. And if you're interested in that full story of the buried report, it's in the Can of Worms chapter in my book, page 327. So what's new now is that the officials at the top of the Department of Energy have come to the same conclusion as the experts working for them did nearly 3 years ago. There are now 2 US intelligence agencies that say a lab leak is the most likely cause of the pandemic. Another 2 agencies are undecided, and that includes the CIA. And 4 say the virus most likely arose naturally. None of these agencies have a high degree of confidence in their positions. When you look at the New York Times headline today, it's surreal to think that 2 years ago, and certainly 3, media outlets like the New York Times, the ABC, CNN, The Guardian, and so many others were utterly incurious about how the pandemic started. So incurious that they insisted a lab leak was a conspiracy theory. ABC Media Watch host Paul Barry was patronising and belittling when he ridiculed our reports investigating this topic.
So how likely is it that the virus escaped from that Chinese lab? Well, in short, it's not. Despite concerns expressed by the Americans in 2018 about lax standards, and despite what President Trump has been saying. Why did the lab escape theory still dominate the story, especially when virus experts had dismissed it 3 days earlier in the Sydney Morning Herald?
COVID-19 did not come from lab.
The evidence is overwhelming that the virus that causes COVID-19 jumped from animals to humans, rather than escaping from a laboratory, virus experts say.
Sharri must have missed that bulletin.
Oh yeah, I missed it. Well, the truth is this. There has always been mountains of evidence that the pandemic may have started in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's always been mountains of evidence if anyone bothered to take a look. The evidence isn't definitive, it's not conclusive, but it is overwhelming. As the former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe told me in our Sky News documentary. Is it a smoking gun?
Ultimately, I don't think there's ever going to be one specific smoking gun. I think there's more than just smoke here. I think there's fire from a whole bunch of different sources. I think that would be another compelling piece of evidence if you need more. I don't need more.
And there's certainly more evidence linking the Wuhan Institute of Virology to the start of COVID-19 than there is evidence to support the theory that the most infectious virus in a century just arose naturally in Wuhan. Now, without reiterating the 130,000 words of my book here, the main points are this. The Wuhan Institute of Virology was conducting gain-of-function experiments on bat coronaviruses to make them more lethal, more transmissible to humans. And they housed live bats in cages in their labs. But instead of investigating what was happening in Wuhan, we were ill-served by those in positions of authority. There was censorship from the big tech giants. Medical journals refused to publish scientific articles on the topic. And journalists prioritised being popular rather than actually investigating how the pandemic may have started.
It's very, very strongly leaning towards this could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated.
Just weeks ago, Dr. Anthony Fauci rejected the conspiracy that coronavirus was man-made in a lab in Wuhan, China. And yet this week, Donald Trump is still pushing the debunked bunkum.
I'm really sorry that the lab leak has become such a distraction for so many people, because frankly, we still don't know. There is no evidence really to say.
A lot of people on the right love that phrase, escape from the lab, because it sounds like something from a Marvel movie or a comic book. Both scientists and the U.S. intelligence community agree that this coronavirus was not man-made. That is not a possibility.